So we're moving on to our third pillar of consistency in training, and this one is definitely a little bit more getting into the nitty-gritties of training and what we do as trainers and why we can make things happen. And consistency is something that is funny, that is so difficult for everyone. And if it's not working, they want to change the direction fairly quickly. It didn't work for one situation, or it didn't work for the day, or, you know, can I modify this a little bit? And they keep trying new things, and then their dog never gets into a groove of consistency. And so the first thing that we're going to talk about in this pillar is the consistency of crate training, and the difficulty that people have in general of crate training their dogs, and everything that they read out there on the internet about crate training, and the good and the bad, and how you should do it, and, you know, phasing into duration, to not making it a bad place to be, and if they're barking and whining, then it's got to be a bad place and they don't want to be in there. So there's so much that has, you know, that's around crate training, that I feel like it's always this big purple elephant in the room, that people know they need to do it, but they don't want to do it. And they kind of sort of want to do it, but not really follow everything. And so as we go through this pillar of consistency, we're going to talk in depth about some really important things from our recall. We'll get into the come command, we'll get into feeding routines. We're going to get into that a little bit with crate training. Walking, leash walking, how to get good leash walking. And so with this pillar, it is a good time to go onto our online training program that's morethansit.com, because you can see the videos and everything that we are doing and talking about in this pillar. So I think it's a great time to talk about our online program, because as you're listening, you can see and watch, and you can refer back to, and it also will help you stay consistent. So morethansit.com is our online training platform that you can watch videos and learn how to do it yourself as we get going. So so let's get into crate training, and this should be done with any dog that comes into your home brand new, and it should be done with consistency, and that is where a lot of people fail with it. Michelle, what are some of the things that when you go into homes that you find it's difficult for people in that place of crate training?
I mean, the biggest thing is that people being consistent, especially if there's multiple people in the house.
Yeah.
For instance, I'm dealing with this in my personal life right now. My mom just got a new dog, and she's great. She's fantastic about putting this dog in when the dog is too hyper, or when her and the other dog get into little tiffs, or, you know, just those times that dog needs a nap, and stuff like that. But my dad is completely terrible at it. So and especially if you've got kids in the mix, I think it's really hard to stay on the same page to be consistent with everybody in the house with crate training. People coming home at different times, people leaving at different times. Also, I mean, more often than not you hear, but I just feel bad, they're in there all day.
Yeah.
They hate it. I'm trying to think of what else other excuses we get that are like, I think another big one, and this is actually a big one for me, so I totally understand it, is I don't like the way it looks in my house. Yeah. And I hate the way the crates look in my house, so that's a big one for me, and that's just a selfish reason. But this comes back to being consistent with the crate, and it's so hard for people to be consistent with it, and I think it's because it's such a big piece of training. It's a big thing, it really is. Yeah. But I really do think also our society has this really weird stigma that it's a bad thing that your dog's in the crate all the time.
Right.
And
for sure. There's so many excuses around it, that as a trainer, that's all I feel like I've been dealing with over the last 2 weeks is we've got Christmas puppies coming in and they're like, so can I take him out at the, how about only 2 hours or, and so it's really difficult for people to just embrace this tool.
Oh, the weekends are impossible, right? Because you're
Yeah.
home or
Yeah.
the kids are home, so it's,
Yep.
Yeah, so and there's all those little excuses of like, oh, but we were home for the day, why would he not be out with us? Or,
Yeah, exactly. Shannon, tell us a little bit about Louis and his love for, he has a very big love affair with his crates.
He does. I think it's because, like, for him, it's the only thing that's totally his that he feels like he owns.
Yeah.
Because he's willing to share everything else,
Yeah.
except for that,
Yeah.
pretty much. And I think he's just like, but this one thing is mine. Because
Yeah.
dogs just really like stuff.
Yeah.
They like to, like, win things from the other dogs and like flaunt it and like, this is my trophy, la la la,
Yeah,
and tease
yeah.
other,
Yeah.
they're really into owning stuff.
Yeah.
Dogs are.
Yeah.
So I think for him, that's like his thing that he owns. It's
Yeah.
his and nobody else can have it. However, he's been manipulated into letting the other dogs be in it. And I took a picture the other day of both other dogs were in at the same time. So he was the only dog that was not in there the other day. But I don't know, he loves his crate.
Yeah. Melissa, what are some helpful hints that you give when you first go into homes with crate and crate training?
I give them the example of, I'm going to take you and for 4 hours you're going to be at the spa. Or you're going to be in a room where you can just take a nap, no one's going to bother you, and it's going to be just completely peaceful. Do you guys, is that a good idea? And they're all like, oh, I would love that, I would love that. So would your dog.
Yeah.
So I think of that and I tell them, instead of calling it a crate, call it the Zen den,
Mm-hmm.
if that mentally makes it a better picture for them. And some people it does, like, oh,
Yeah.
they're going to go in their Zen den.
Yeah.
But kind of talking to them about how, and a lot of people say, oh, but my dog sleeps outside of their crate.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of like they're still on alert. We want them to be
Ready
fully
for that.
relaxed.
Yeah.
And I kind of just explain it in that way. Like it's
Mhm.
a treat for your dog. It's their little den. It's their cave. It's their little kingdom that
Yeah.
they can just fully relax in.
Yeah.
And they have no responsibilities.
Yeah.
And so I kind of put it to them that way, and especially parents.
Sure.
And like, imagine taking a nap in your bedroom with the door closed or on the couch with the kids out.
Right.
What do you prefer?
Nice. Yeah. I think that I think one of the hardest pieces of crate training is that they feel like that they're home, that their dog should be with us, that's going to create connection and bonding, and we want them to be with us and have fun with us, and when in reality the crate training creates a dog's connection with you and creates that wanting to be with you, that they're away from you during their certain times of sleeping, and that they are safe and that they don't have anything to worry about. And so I created this schedule. It's a schedule that I take every dog through. If people can't crate train their dogs, they'll send them to us to get them crate trained. And in all the years that I've been training, I have yet to be able to accomplish this schedule in 2 weeks. Like literally have the dog running into the crate when they're told to kennel within 2 weeks, except for the last 2 dogs that I had took 2 months, and that's a first for me. But following the schedule, and as we break this down, and I tell people all the time, put the times of this schedule to your life and just follow, what we're supposed to do in 30-minute increments, kind of a thing. So let's talk about that first one. And this is always something that's very fascinating to me. So I'm just gonna go off of what this time schedule is, but it's not the time that I follow, as it's always just when we get up. So 7 a.m. up and outside for 30 minutes. That is one of the hardest pieces for people to do. And even like apartment living people, you have to get up early enough to get your dog and let them be outside for that 30 minutes because they get distracted. It's a new day, there's new smells, there's new things going on, and the dogs don't completely empty themselves out like they're supposed to, and then they come in and they have an accident. So I don't care where you live, you have a fenced in yard or no fenced in yard, 30 minutes out in the morning. If you live in a cold place, it's difficult, but if you have a fenced in yard, you should not be going out with your dog. They should be out by themselves for 30 minutes. And that is really hard for people to do. And Michelle, why do you think that is?
Oh, because people don't wake up in time.
Yeah.
They gotta get to work.
Yeah.
Weekends are even harder because you're lazy. Like, you know, well, I am anyways. I'm totally calling myself out on that for sure. Sundays are my sleep day, so.
Yeah.
But just definitely not giving yourself enough time.
Yeah.
In general. Or, I mean, if you have to go out with the dog, it is a lot harder, like if you live in an apartment.
Mm-hmm.
But I like, people in apartments, I like to explain that it should take you 30 minutes for you to get up, get your shoes on, get the dog, take them outside, and be back within 30 minutes. Like that's still, there's a lot of steps to that, right? Like you going outside and coming back in.
Right.
It's not like you were literally like, okay, I'm outside, I'm going to set a timer for 30 minutes now. That's a whole process when you live in an apartment, right?
Yeah.
I think another problem is if the weather is colder, the dog wants back in, it's barking, it's crying. And I to your point, you shouldn't go out with them. I think that's even more important at that age,
right?
To teach them, like, nope, you're going to be okay being outside by yourself for a few minutes.
Yeah, yeah.
But I mean, it's really hard if you live in the city and he's barking and whining and crying. So, what
advice do you give people with that, with having a dog that's barking, carrying on, wanting to come back in?
You know, it depends on how bad the situation is. Like where I live, it's not that big of a deal. I do still live in the city, but it really is not.
A little bit more rural.
Yeah, you know, so as long as the dog's not freaking out, I just ignore it.
Yeah.
Somewhere like a little bit more where you live, it's going to be a little bit different. And sometimes that is, you have to go outside with your dog. Sometimes it is, depending. Other times you're going to give them a firm no. Sometimes it's maybe not as long outside. You know, it really just depends. I'm trying to think of like the last time this has come up because it just depends on what the situation is. I don't think it's an excuse. That just means that, you know, you just have to be a little bit more vigilant about going out with your dog or spending more time in the afternoon having your dog outside, which is a big one that people don't realize that like, oh, let's do this at noon again and see if we can get a little bit longer time without screaming. Right. I mean, I think that's the thing with dog training. Sometimes it takes time to build up to it as well.
Yep. Melissa, what's your advice with this morning? The dog doesn't want to be out there that long without you.
Bark color. I'm very like and Yuki's like this. The other two are always like, oh, okay, we'll go outside. And Cooper kind of has this clock. She knows 30 minutes. Then she kind of waddles up to the door. Like she just knows that routine. Yeah. Yuki is always testing it. And every once in a while she'll just come up to the door and she doesn't bark too much, but she whines. So put a bark collar on her, put an e-collar, or anytime she barks, I go out and squirt her. And she hates that. Yeah. Or I get out a shaker can. And so, or I'll push her out and I'll kind of make her go further out in the yard. But for her, the less contact she has with me, the better, because she considers that a win. Right. So I throw out a shaker can. I squirt her with I fill a squirt bottle by the door. And if she does it, then she's like, oh crap. And she just, by now she knows I don't even go up on the porch or make a sound. Yeah. Because mom will find me. Yeah. And so.
So I think that's still really hard because if you're out making noise, I think it's really hard because you're like, oh crap, I don't want to create more noise for my neighbors that early in the morning. I know with my dogs, there was a while there that I was bringing them back in and putting them in a crate or in their room for a few minutes and then throwing them back outside until they could be quiet. Because they still weren't getting that attention from me. They were not getting that like reward from me. because they were going into the bathroom is actually where I was putting them because it was much easier. So they weren't getting that time with me that they actually really wanted. And then they would go directly back outside until they could be quiet for 5 minutes that time and then 10 minutes the next day. So I think that was a little bit harder. I mean, I've used the shaker can and stuff like that too occasionally with people, but I just think it's a little bit harder if you're going out creating a lot of noise as well at 7 a.m.
Yeah.
And I'm totally all for a bark collar if your dog is old enough for one. And that is, I think that's really hard, or big enough. I know the last little guys you had were pretty small when you first got them, and that's harder. Like Rambo can't, like he can now that he's much older, but like I would have never put a bark collar on Rambo when he was a puppy because he weighed 3 pounds.
Right.
Like I don't even know if you can find a collar that small.
Yeah, I don't think so.
Yeah, like so I think that's a little bit harder. I was just thinking through when you were saying that, like what I actually have done, and I think that worked the best for my dogs, but it doesn't work for all dogs because some dogs think that's the reward that they get to come in, even if it's
because they want to go to their crate.
Even if it's not possible. Yeah, like so. Sorry, I was just trying to think through that.
Yeah. I'll as far as disciplining, puppies are always an inside-outside game. Always. You come in, you go to your crate. You can either be in your crate or you can be outside. If you're apartment living or you don't have a fenced-in yard, I've got one client that we just do a tie-out for his, and if he's barking on his tie-out, he comes back in and goes to his crate, and it's this back and forth thing with him right now, and we will head into more of an e-collar type situation with him because he's not going to have a fenced-in yard ever. And so we'll eventually do the invisible fence, but so for him there's going to be some of that building into. Definitely using the tools to discipline based on the situation and the dog and how they perceive it is really important as well. I've had some that don't mind even the vinegar in the face. I've had some that the shaker can is pretty much a great game, but I've had others that it's like 1 or 2 shakes and they're like, yep, don't pick up that can. Or I've even hung a can on the door, so when they come up to the door, they shake it and startle themselves if they're that dog. But they have to know that their behaviors come with a consequence, and based on their age and based on where you're at in training, sometimes harsher discipline for the dog to go, oh, there's rules in this situation. Sometimes our own dogs will push us a lot more because they know what they can get away with, and so our discipline for our own dogs can and tend to be a little bit more harsh because they manipulate us in such a different way versus and sometimes we have to teach people that, like, well, they're going to do it for me, but they're not going to do it for you because they know how to manipulate around it because we are not consistent. We know that they know that we are going to give in at some point and they're going to get whatever they need. And we do. We're great at giving in to our dogs because they'll come into it from a different angle with it. Well, I'm not barking, but I'm whining. How's that work for you? And sometimes we can tolerate the whining, and then other times we're on it, and then all of a sudden they're like, well, it didn't work this time, but it might work another time. So I think all of the things that we do, we have to stay, one, we have to stay consistent. 2, disciplining is varied. And it will, with one dog, one time you may do a squirt bottle, one time you may do a shaker can, one time it may be I'm going to grab the collar and put you in your crate, another time it may be that I just need to be out there with you. And so with dog training it takes time, and all the tools that we have, I think people just need to realize that there's a lot of tools out there to accomplish what you need to make this really important step in getting your dog to be outside and disconnect from you to go to the bathroom.
I totally agree, and I think the hard part and the hard thing to be about being consistent is with this is you should try it for 2 weeks, at least, at very least. And that's what people, because there's so many tools and so many different ways to do this, that it's so easy to just be like, oh, that didn't work yesterday, so we're gonna try something new today. But your dog is just gonna learn, oh, they're just gonna do something new tomorrow.
Right,
The dogs are smart enough to realize that,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
oh, that worked yesterday, so.
Yep. Yeah.
So I think that's the hard part about being consistent, is doing it for long enough
Right.
to see if it's gonna
Right.
work.
Yeah, for sure. And also, you know, sometimes it just, I mean, I'm sure that you found that their frame of mind is different each day. And so, yeah, one day you might have the bark collar on because you're pushing those boundaries way too far. And then another time it could be a look. Yeah, don't do that. And they're like, oh, yeah, I remember what happened last time she looked like that. So I'm gonna go, you know, go do my own thing. But ignoring also it can be, depending upon where you live and what you know what you have going on for that. The other thing that I really like with apartment living situations is a lot of apartments nowadays have the dog park in their apartment complex, and I really encourage my clients to use that as their yard so that they can somewhat disconnect from their dog in that situation, so the dog can go to the bathroom. And then the other, if they don't have that situation, I tell them to just take your tie out, hook it around a tree, and disconnect from your dog. So this is about crate training, routines, expectations, and when we go out in the morning, get your business done. The next thing that becomes difficult is back in for the crate for breakfast, because they've been in there all night long. They're going to be in there for their 4-hour stretch, and you want me to put them back in the crate for 30 minutes to eat? Why do you think we do that, Shannon?
I like it at my house because I have a lot of dogs, and I like them to all feel like they can relax and be in control of their food, because we have a lot of food problems at my house, right? And so having them all be having their safe place to have their food and just relax and be able to eat it on their own terms over that 30, whether they want to eat it fast or they want to eat it slow, and they're not worried about this dog eats really fast and then runs over and eats their food too, you know, so that they can have a relaxing time to eat and not become weird, you know, because you can create a lot of issues with food. My dog had a propensity toward weirdness because he's already a bulldog, and they already have that, like, this is my food, this is my stuff, like genetic personality wise, you know, but you don't want to create weird food stuff, and this is a first step to not create weirdness.
Melissa, what's your take on, you know, single dog eating in their crate?
At very, very basic, food makes them happy. There's an association with crate. Crate is happy because food is happy. Like, why do you think everybody loves their kitchen?
Right.
That's like a big hangout spot. It's just a peaceful place that the dog can eat and know, okay, this is my home. This is my den. It's part of survival. It's where I sleep. It's protection, and it's food.
Good.
So it becomes very core to their survival. And that dogs are still all about survival.
I like that. Michelle?
Honestly, Melissa's answer is exactly what I was. It just makes it more of a den type of thing. It just creates, especially if you want your dog to be like happy and running back into their crate. There are a lot of dogs that are food motivated and that they get excited to go back in there for that. I think it's the easiest way to create that, like, hey, go to your crate type of, like the word associate too is like, oh, go to your crate, because it's happy and exciting. Even having a single dog, like, I think it's still a good idea to have a safe area for your dog to be able to eat if you have kids.
They get distracted.
Right. It's just safer for them to have their food in there. We don't use it at our house anymore. I mean, we do sometimes with Prudence, because she'll try to eat the other dog's food too. And that's just a weight thing for her. So, but we did it with when they were puppies. You know, all of them were in crates. So to create that den.
One of the biggest challenges that I've had with clients in their crates and feeding and puppyhood and you're creating a safe place, and you want this to be a good, fun, hey, let's get in our crate, it's time to eat, it's, there's nothing to worry about, you don't need to have your hand, and you just don't have to do all this extra food handling stuff if they never have to worry about their food being taken away from them. I mean, they just don't. They naturally will just feel safe when eating. So when it's down and they're eating outside of their crate, they really don't have the resource guarding problems because they've never learned that they need to worry about that. But one thing that's really difficult for people, and what triggered that was Melissa saying, dogs it's their survival. So we have a safe place to sleep, we have a safe place to eat. It's it's kind of our survival spot. I help people understand that when a dog will start eating their meal in their crate, they are no longer stressed about their crate. And sometimes first puppies, I have a client that shipped in a puppy, and it's from a puppy mill, they didn't know, it was just a mess, and this puppy was stressing in the crate, and probably one of the worst as far as stress-wise, where he would not eat. And so we trained with food, and he was getting his nutrients that way because I had to make sure he was going to get his nutrients. He needed to eat something, but we never got him to that point. I'm hoping I have him for a long time over Christmas, that I'm hoping I can get him over that hump with that. But I finally just said, let him eat out here, because he was finally settling in his crate during the critical times that we needed it to be. But if a dog doesn't eat for 48 hours, 99% of them are going to start eating after that. And so give them that time to de-stress and realize that they don't have to worry. There's nothing that they need to survive over, because you're keeping it safe for them, and that you're not making it a big deal. And so when your dogs, and for adult dogs, for me, I don't worry about the eating behaviors for a good 3 days, because they will eat. Sometimes I leave it in all day. Sometimes I'm just going to leave the food there, and every time you're in there, your food is there. It's always offered to them. They will start eating. And this puppy will shift over once they get to me, but the owner was so worried about the food. And it comes back to, right, we hang out in our kitchen. The food is like a big thing in our culture. And so, the dog needs to eat. And so there's some important things that with food that help us realize where our stage of crate training is at, when they can eat, when they're running into their crate and they're making that association to food. It is important to make sure your dog gets the proper calories and they need the nutrients, but as much as you can, the crate needs to be that first source of, this is where I eat, this is my safe place for food. And then we have this 4-hour minimum stretch that we tell everybody that their dogs and puppies need to be in. And then we repeat this whole process where they're out, they're eating time, it's outside time, and all of this. But the 4-hour stretch, you read all over, phase them into it, leave them in for an hour, leave them in for an hour and a half, or put them in 5-minute periods. And it's just something that I fundamentally don't believe in with a dog, of phasing them into something, because their brains don't work like that. It's very black and white, we're going to do this or we're not going to do this. And so that 4-hour stretch is very difficult for people. That a lot of times I'm like, okay, figure out how to be out of the house for 4 hours if you can't have them in their crate for 4 hours when you're home.
It's so interesting because people that work, it's not the issue, right?
Right.
But the second they're home on the weekends, it's an issue. And you're
Yeah.
like, if you want your dog to feel safe during the week,
Yeah.
or like, I think the hardest thing for people to wrap their heads around is like they'll take off like a month to get a puppy, which I always think is so funny. But
Yeah.
but like a month from now, when you are gone for 8 to 12 hours a day,
Right.
like the normal average American works, right? Like,
Yeah.
what do you expect your dog to do?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
they're gonna freak out if you don't stick to that schedule. And I will admit, I think it's really hard. I think that is the hardest piece on the weekends to stick to, because you're just like, well, I'm home, like,
Yeah.
and they're sleeping on the couch with me. It's
Right.
fine.
Right.
Like,
Yeah. Yeah. And from a dog trainer standpoint, for me, it's not that difficult, because I don't really feel like I'm ever home for 4 hours, and if I am, I'm busy, I'm busy, so it's pretty easy, but for the average person's life, it really is difficult for them to go, okay, you be in your crate, I'm going to watch TV, why can't my dog be with me? Or I'm hanging out and why can't they be with me? But that is the purpose of this back time situation, and that's the other element in this crate training thing that is difficult for people to go, I have to have a leash on my dog attached to me. What if I need to do the dishes? Well, step on your leash. Or I'm going to tie him to something, and then I have the extremes. I come in, the only place the dog knows is tied to the corner of the couch. Like, okay, we got to move around the house with your dog. So they think, they come in, they're either back tied to the couch, they're in their crate, or they're outside. And because people generally stay in one area, that's where you're going to be. So I have extremes with this back tying thing. Melissa, what's your recommendation with the leash being on the dog, and why the leash, and how does back tying look?
One of the most effective ways of talking to people about this, I've kind of said, like, you putting the leash on your dog is telling your dog that you want them to be with you.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, they'll exist with you, like, in the house, but to tell your dog, hey, I want you to come hang out with me.
Mm-hmm.
That's the message. You can't just keep calling them, because then that changes the recall, right? That's a whole different thing. But we want them on their own, with their legs, to walk to us. Yes, there's a leash, but we want that to become normalized.
Mm-hmm.
And so part of the routine, I also ask people, what do you want this dog to be like in 5 years?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I want them to follow me and hang out with me and just be my buddy. Well, they're going to start doing their own thing if you don't invite them in with you. And by inviting them in is with the leash. That prevents chewing on the couch. That prevents all these other behaviors that we don't like in our dogs.
Yeah.
Barking out of the window, charging the door. They don't have a chance to learn that if they're tied to you.
Yeah.
And then back tying is teaching them that they can settle in a room with you and be a part of it all.
Yeah, I like that. Michelle?
Oh, I think there's so many reasons for this. As we're talking, I'm like, oh my gosh, it's kind of exciting to talk to people about this a little bit for me, because it really is. It's like, okay, let's start with just potty training. Just that simple little thing as potty training, which I know some people are like, it's not easy, but I don't know any trainer, positive or not, that will not tell you the best thing to do for your dog for potty training is to prevent accidents from happening in the first place.
Right.
That is if you teach them to go pee in this one spot, right, every single day, eventually they're just going to that's where we go.
Yep.
But it's the same thing, chewing on the couch. Like, if they never ever get the reason, to chew on the couch, you don't have to fix that.
Right.
Like, let's not fix behaviors, right? Like, let's prevent them.
Yep.
So having your dog with you all the time helps to do that, because you have control over everything that they are doing.
Yeah.
It creates connection, because they literally are connected to you.
Yep.
I think the connection piece is a little bit harder, because if you're not willing, like if you are completely disconnecting from them, they probably should be in their crate at that point.
Right.
Because that's a good time for them to be in their crate.
Correct.
But it creates connection. Melissa's 100% right. It's going to create that, like, hey, I want to be everywhere with you, because that's what they're doing.
Yep.
My general rule with the leash is 4 months physically attached to you.
Mm-hmm.
And this is 100% will change with every dog.
Yeah.
There are some dogs that's a lot longer than that.
Yeah.
This is just my general 6 months. Like, they're still consistently with you. You have stuff to do with the leash.
Yeah.
Same with the crate, 6 months, depending on the dog. Hey, we can start sleeping outside of the crate.
Mm-hmm.
Probably most dogs closer to a year. 6 months to a year is where most dogs, I feel like, depending on the breed and the individual dog, get these independent, okay, we'll detach the leash from me, but it's still attached to you.
Right.
But I would recommend people leaving the leash on for at least a year.
Yeah.
Unless they're outside in the yard playing. That's totally a different scenario, because you don't want your dog to get stuck on stuff. But same with the crate. It's 6 months to a year that they can start sleeping outside of the crate. Probably more like 2 to 3 years so they can be out of the crate during the day.
Yeah.
just because you want to prevent those things.
Right.
What do you really want to come home to a half chewed up couch? I don't.
Yeah,
I do not. And if your dog never learned to do that, they never will do it.
Right. Yep.
Like if you get past that teething stage and they've never learned to do it, they're not going to start.
Yep.
Like it just doesn't happen.
Yep. Yep.
Unless something crazy happens and you're gone for like 24 hours or
Right.
something
Right.
crazy.
Yeah.
But-
Yeah. I'm pretty strict, and I'm pretty adamant because I've done it to, I've had clients that actually will do it, and the end result is amazing. And that is, I'm a 2-year leash person. It doesn't mean that it's attached to you for the whole 2 years, and it does not mean that it is attached to the dog the whole 2 years. But by the time the dog is 2, we have phased off of the leash. And so the instant the dog makes error, they're back on for a duration. Depending upon the error, they may be back and attached to you. So that first year is leash on, attached to you or something. And then that second year is a year of phasing off of. And it's also the time that I phase and start phasing off of that 4-hour mandatory nap. As well. So a lot of stuff happens in that second year, but here's the end result with following a routine with crate training is you prevent problems, you get house training down to a T, your dog has routines and they have no problems being in their crate for the rest of their life if they're have to go to the vet and be in the crate. I mean, it's just, there's so much to that they never let go. But here's the other piece with a 2-year leash attachment type thing is you will never have a problem with recall. I promise. I don't care what the breed is. If you can stick with it, you will never have a recall problem. Doesn't mean that you don't teach a recall, but you will never have a recall problem, ever. Dogs that we work with on the routines of even just simple leash walking, we eventually can just take them off leash and feel comfortable that they're going to be with us because of that attachment. And so it is one of the hardest thing, and most people will not stick with it. And my challenge, our crate training schedule is on morethansit.com. And I challenge you to attach yourself to that leash and create the connection. And my challenge would be 2 years. I think it should be everybody's goal. And amazing things happen with it. And one of our earlier podcasts, we had a guest on that actually one of my clients that did it for 2 years. And their little pity mix is, he's just super amazing for that family. He's a goofball. They can take him off leash and do anything with him off leash. And we really never went through the process of a recall. We taught a recall, but it was just like, okay, take the leash off. He's going to stay with you. And he knows his family really well. And so it's if you want to go back and listen to, some of our other podcasts, there is one client that was so diligent with it, that it truly works if you can stick with it. This crate training schedule, I should say more of the crate training routine, if you can stick to it, it will work. And so we have some fun and exciting things happening with WS, and that I have a puppy on the way mid-January, and I'm going to document this journey right here. And I can pretty much guarantee that dog within 2 weeks will be going to the door on its own, or at least pulling on the leash to get to the door. And will be sleeping in their crate and be settled in and be okay with the schedule. And I'm going to document it for you. And throughout the next 2 years, I will document this leash situation because it is a hunting dog. So they're big roamers to a certain extent. They're runners. And my goal with her is to prove that you do this and it's not a problem. So, we'll be going on this journey where we all have kind of some new and exciting things coming into even the More Than Sit program of training. Michelle eventually will be getting a puppy sooner than later. And Melissa's on this journey of her dogs making sandwiches. So there's a lot of super fun things that it's coming for the new year, and I just can't say enough that this routine of crate training is where it all starts for all of us. Melissa, do you have any last minute advice?
One thing a lot of people like hate is the first few nights of the screaming. It will end eventually. If not, we're here. That's why we're here, is to help you. But get some earphones, get some strong coffee in the morning, and you will make it through. Like a lot of people think it won't. It's impossible. They're not trainable. They are. It'll work.
Michelle?
My thing is it's not forever. Melissa's 100% right with that. I really wish there was a way to like show people the different relationships I have with my dogs and how much of a difference this kind of stuff made when he was a puppy.
Yeah.
Murphy and me are like, if anybody's listening to these podcasts, like before this, I'm sure you all know how much I adore that stupid dog.
Yeah.
And I really like, there's so much we did that first year, and it comes back to a lot of just this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I have a connection with my other two, but it is nothing like it is with him. And that to me shows the difference of like what you can have with your dog.
Yeah.
And it's not easy. It's not, I will admit, like some of this stuff, I get it. Like we've all been through it,
Yep.
but it is not forever,
Yep.
and it will pay off.
Yep, for sure. Shannon?
This is why this is a pillar of consistency,
Yep,
right?
yep.
If you can commit to be consistent to this schedule,
Yep.
completely consistent for 2 weeks, everything about training your dog will be easier.
Yeah, yep, exactly.
Everything.
Yep.
So you just have to do it.
Do it.
Be consistent.
Make it happen.